Welcome back to another episode of War in Cali. In this episode, I will detail the Venice Shoreline Crips. City of Venice was founded by Abbot Kinney around 1905. He came from Venice, Italy, and wanted the place he settled to be like where he came from, and that's how Venice was born. He wanted to recreate the Italy feel in California, and that's what he did. By 1926, Venice became its own city, but with a lot of segregation, black residents only were allowed to live in certain areas in Venice, and that would be places like Oakwood. Along the years, gangs would start to arise in Venice, and names like Ghost Town and Venice Boys were the early names heard among the black residents. But by 1972, the Venice Shoreline Crips would be established. They would get their name off being from Venice and by the water. But the Shorelines wouldn't be the only gang to form in Venice. Many Mexican families were also moving to Venice, and this would lead to gangs like Venice 13 being formed. They would later become daily rivals of the Shorelines, on fighting for turf and also the drug trade. This pushed numerous shootings and also deaths between both gangs. First thing about this beef, they started off as friends, but this beef would get crazy in the 1990s.
Oakwood Park was empty. This neighborhood filled with fear. Many residents wouldn't even leave their houses.
You were scared to even walk down the streets. You couldn't walk nowhere without looking back, thinking someone was going to come down the street with guns or something.
Oakwood and surrounding Venice was a battleground. Since last September, at least 70 people shot, 20 killed. A drug dispute between the Latino V-13s and the Black Shoreline Crips escalated into a race war. Most of the victims weren't even gang members.
It didn't make no sense. I don't see why they had to do all that over nothing.
Neither did LAPD, which beefed up patrols all over Venice. The district attorney's office was about to implement an abatement program to clear the streets of gang members.
We care about everybody who has to live in a world that is filled with all kinds of struggle.
Politicians postured, "Stop the violence! And community members protested.
Shorelines would also develop several other rivals, like the Rolling 60s, being one of their first rivals. Also other Crips like the Graveyard Crips, the Playboy Gangster Crips, and rival blood hoods like the Rolling 20 Bloods and BPS. They also beef with other Sereno gangs like Santa Monica 13 and Culver City 13. Shoreline Crips and the Culver City 13 beef comes from the Shoreline members moving into the Mar Vista projects, which is claimed by Culver City. This will lead to several shootings between both gangs and even fire bombings. Things like this and several other things will lead to the Shorelines leaving the area. The Shorelines have allied gangs like the Schoolyard Crips and also the Roller 30 Crips among some others. Some of the Shorelines' main streets are 7th, 6th, and 5th Ave, which members rep those blocks by saying 700, 600, and 500. The Shoreline Crips claim Oakwood Park, and they also wear St. Louis Cardinals gear to rep Shoreline. But with that being said, let's get into some cases. Henry from Shoreline was with his homie Jeff driving to a party. Once they arrived at the party, they seen a guy named John outside of the party. They then asked him where was he from. He replied by saying, "I'm not no blood or no Crip, and I don't care about none of that." The Crips took that as disrespect. Jeff challenged John to a fight, but instead of fighting, John started to run. Henry grabbed his gun and started shooting at John, hitting John multiple times, taking his life. Many witnesses at the party will pick Henry and Jeff out as the shooters. They were both even pinned to shooting out of blood earlier in the day before they took John's life. Both of these shootings would get Henry and Jeff life sentences. In the morning of January 15th, 2004, George was with Juan and his homie Chris. They went to the Oakwood section of Venice, claimed by the Shoreline Crips. George would shoot a man named Michael in the head, taking his life. Michael was from Shoreline Crip. The shooting was witnessed by Michael's wife, Gia, and according to Gia, George approached her and Michael in their parked car, and then George shot Michael in the head. Police responded rapidly to the shooting and captured George and his homies. George admitted to the police that he shot Michael, and he claimed that he was driving to Oakwood. Michael asked him and his homies if they wanted to buy some dope. When George declined, Michael asked where he was from and said that he was from Shoreline Crip. George told the police next thing he knew that he shot Michael. George and his homies were from Culver City 13. George would receive life for the shooting. On June 5th, 2006, during a class break, some female students got into a fight at Venice High School. The brother of one of the fighters saw his sister fighting, so he broke up the fight. One of the fighters then threatened to have her brother beaten up for interfering with the fight. So later that day, some gang members from Venice Shoreline Crips were called up. Some of the Shorelines that went up to the school were Ramon, Simone, T, Wayman, and a few other people. They all went up to Venice High School to beat up the person who broken up the fight earlier. Before finding him, they approached different kids at the school and started pressing them. One of the Shorelines tried to take jewelry off a student's neck, and when the student resisted, the Shorelines punched him and started jumping him. This will all lead to a fight between the Shorelines and several students. One of the Shorelines pulled out a knife and started stabbing multiple students. One of the students seen his brother stabbed and chased after the Shorelines who was fleeing from the school. The Shorelines seen somebody chasing after them, and one pulled out a gun, started shooting, killing the stabbing victim's brother in the school parking lot. Ramon would later get arrested and receive 17 years for the shooting. August 25th, 2007. Saeed shot at John and Joseph 5 times. Saeed was from Shoreline Crip and was traveling on Inglewood Boulevard. He seen John and Joseph, who he believed to be from Culver City 13, driving past him in another car, so he decided to shoot at him, but he hit neither. The shooter was later determined to be Saeed, and a gun was found in his apartment. Saeed's girlfriend later testified that he was with her at the bar the whole time, so he couldn't have did the shooting, but this was later determined to be false. Saeed would later receive life. On the morning of November 3rd, 2009, Taj, a member of the Shoreline Crips, learned that his homie Will had been messing with his ex-girlfriend Raquel. Later that day, Taj and Will were supposed to meet up. They were supposed to meet in the area of 7th and Broadway, near Oakwood Park. A few minutes later after meeting up, Will's cousin heard multiple gunshots. Will was shot and killed, and he was killed in a nearby alley. The blame was solely going on Santa Monica 13, a gang that the Shoreline's been beefing with for a while. Shortly before 9 p.m. that same night, 2 men named Rich and Richard had been hanging out at Virginia Avenue Park in Santa Monica with a few females. Richard was from Santa Monica 13. Before they knew it, 2 black men soon approached them and started firing several shots at them. The shooting left Rich dead. A police officer who was parked nearby saw several men running from the scene and followed them in his car. He seen them get into a car, and the car would take him on a chase. He would eventually stop the car, which would lead to 4 Shoreline Crips being arrested, including Taj. Taj would end up getting charged with this shooting and also the killing of his homie Will, but he would later be acquitted of killing Will, with no real evidence being brought forth. Taj and the 3 other Shoreline Crips would receive life for killing the Santa Monica 13 member. August 3rd, 2016. Marvin was working as a traffic technician at a construction site near the intersection of 7th and Brooks Avenue in Venice. On that day, he was wearing a short sleeve shirt, which showed his tattoos, associating him with the Avenues gang. Witnesses seen a masked man chase Marvin in the intersection and shoot Marvin once in the back from point blank range, taking his life. Police later determined the shooter to be a black man, and with the shooting being in Shoreline's turf, the police started questioning the Shoreline members and people in the area. Police later determined the shooter off his social media, and it was a man named Greg. Greg was arrested 7 months after the shooting and placed in a cell with an informant. He admitted to the informant that he did the shooting, and he went into detail about everything that happened. Greg will later get 50 years to life for the shooting. Over the years, the demographics of Venice have changed a lot, and a lot of the original residents, being black and Hispanics, have been pushed out, and white residents have bought all the property and have been gentrifying all of the area, making the area around 5% black and 20% Hispanic. As of now, the Venice 13 and the Shoreline Crips have calmed down their rivalry and have been on a ceasefire, but both are still heavily beefing with other gangs. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.